G'day guys, I'm Ragnar. Today we're going to be talking about Enhancement Shaman in the pre-patch. So day one of the pre-patch, Enhancement Shaman will look completely different. It's got quite a rework. For example, we've got our Flame Shocks back and Frost Shocks back, and we use Chain Lightning and spells like that again. However, we still have some spells retained that got introduced into Legion, like Crash Lightning, for example. So I'm just going to go through the spellbook and show you what kind of spells we do have, and then I'm going to go over the talents and just give a bit of an overview of what works and what doesn't. Just keep in mind that things may change between now and when pre-patch goes live, but I believe pre-patch isn't that far away now, and it will get announced of the date as well as the release date of Shadowlands by the end of this week at Gamescom, I believe. So first we've got Ancestral Spirit, so obviously this is our revive. We still have Astral Recall, which is like a second Hearthstone. Astral Shift is still our defensive. Unfortunately, Shamanistic Rage has not returned to the game like me and many shamans hope it would. However, we can still hope. We never know, there might be a surprise rebuild later on. We've still got our Bloodlust. We still got our Stun Totem. Chain Heal. So Chain Heal is basically your AoE heal that only jumps to 2 additional targets. It doesn't jump to 5 like it does in Resto's spec. Chain Lightning is the same. We'll just jump to 2 targets. So all up 3 targets, Chain Heal, Chain Lightning. And this works with Maelstrom Weapon, which I'll explain shortly for those who don't know. We've got our Chain Lightning back, which hits 3 targets all up and diminishes on the additional targets by 20%. And we've got our Earth Elemental and Earthbind Totem, which is our slow totem. Farsight. Farsight just allows you to see far away, which is great for battlegrounds if you want to see what the enemy's doing, for example. More of a flavor spell, not used very often. We've got Flame Shock. So Flame Shock's probably one of our main abilities. So notice in the spellbook tab, we've got 2 tabs now. We've got Shaman and Enhancement. So no matter which spec you go, Shaman will always have these abilities. So these are all your baseline ability spells that the Shaman gets. So even if I change to Elemental or Resto, all these spells will still be here. A Flame Shock is basically a dot. You know, it hits for a huge amount. Well, not a huge amount, but for 194 damage, for example, and then it does an additional 1,376 fire damage over 18 seconds. Sorry. So does quite a lot of damage over its full duration. So if the fight's going to last longer than 18 seconds, definitely worth whacking one of these up. There are talents that buff this, which I'll go over shortly. Flame Tongue Weapon. So this is a weapon imbue. It's different to the Flame Tongue we've got in Battle for Azeroth. Notice it lasts for 1 hour. So you imbue your offhand weapon, which is important. That's the offhand. And lasts for 1 hour, and each offhand attack's still 18 additional fire damage, right? So basically we hit that, and then boom, our offhand's got 1 hour of Flame Tongue Weapon. And we've also got Wind Fury Weapon, which imbues your main hand weapon with the element of wind for 30 minutes. That's actually a typo, it's 60 minutes. And each main hand attack has 26% chance to trigger 2 extra attacks, dealing 78 physical damage each. So Wind Fury and Flame Tongue Weapon are back, and they're not annoying buffs that you have to renew every 15 seconds like in Legion of BFA. These will last an hour, so quality of life definitely improved by a huge amount with those being back into the game. I'm not sure why they were taken out in the first place. And let's continue on. We've got our Frost Shock. So Frost Shock, it's kind of like, think of it kind of like Earth Shock and Frost Shock as the same spell for Enhance, because we don't actually get Earth Shock back as Enhance. But Frost Shock is quite strong. Well, one, it's a slow for 6 seconds. It's on a 5-second cooldown, and that's increased with haste. It does share a cooldown with Flame Shock, and Flame Shock shares a cooldown with Frost Shock. So whenever you use one of the shock spells, they'll both go on cooldown, just like it does in Classic WoW. We've got our Ghost Wolf form and Healing Stream Totem, which is now baseline as well. So Healing Stream, and that will pulse out small heals every 1.5 seconds, which is nice to just throw out off cooldown to help the group stay healed up. Healing Surge is pretty much your main healing spell that you'll use with your Maelstrom. We've still got our Hex spell. You still got Hex variants, so if you've got any variants, like I've got the Undead Dinosaur Raptor, yeah, you'll still have these here. Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt's a much more important spell for Enhanced now, so you'll need to put that on your action bar if it wasn't already. Lightning Shield. Lightning Shield is now baseline, I believe, for all Shamans, so that's why it's under the Shaman tab, and it lasts for 30 minutes. We still have Perch. No, not much change there. It does use a fair chunk of mana, about 10% of your mana pool. We still have Tremor Totem. I believe you still need to throw this down before you get feared or charmed. I think while you're being feared or charmed or asleep, you can't use it. So it's not as good as the Pandaria version of it. However, it's still very useful to have as baseline. Still got our Water Walking, still got our nice short Wind Shear cooldown, which is our Interrupt. And we've still got Reincarnation. Notice it's 40% health on mine now, it's no longer 20% health, so when we revive it's a little bit better now. Alright, let's look at enhancement specific spells. Ascendance is still a talent, which I'll go over during the talents. We've still got Cleanse Spirit, which is just a curse removal, which is very handy in places that have annoying curses. Might actually be handy in PvP now too, with Warlocks having curses again. We've got Crash Lightning, so Crash Lightning has had a couple of changes. So electrocutes all enemies in front of you, dealing 189 nature damage, hitting 2 or more targets. Enhances your weapons for 10 seconds, causing Stormstrike and Lava Lash to also hit all targets in front of you. So it enhances your cleave effects. Sorry, it makes your Stormstrike and your Lava Lash cleave. And each target hit by a Crash Lightning increases the damage of your next Stormstrike by 5%. So basically use this off cooldown is the way to go. Even on single target, you do get that benefit for the 5% additional Stormstrike damage. And it also procs Maelstrom, which is handy to have. Alright, we still have Feral Spirit, and we still got our talent for this that can reduce the cooldown and enhances their abilities. They generate 1 stack of Maelstrom Weapon immediately, and 1 stack every 3 seconds for 15 seconds. So when you pop these, you will generate a lot of Maelstrom really quickly, which is really nice to have. We've also got Lava Lash. So Lava Lash works a little bit different. It's got a much bigger cooldown now, 9.1 seconds. And damage is increased by 100% if your offhand weapon is imbued with Flame Tongue Weapon. So you got to make sure that your weapon imbues are always on your weapons, which it's pretty easy to keep up since they last a whole lot, but you just got to make sure you don't forget about them when they wear off. You can easily get weak auras for these once this goes live, so don't worry too much. We still get our Sprint, which is 60% increased movement speed for 8 seconds. Stormstrike, of course, is still pretty much our number 1 ability. This will still have random resets and procs, but not as much as it did in BFA. So it's not as used and spammed as much as it used to. Sundering, that's still a talent, and it's still a very strong talent, pretty much exactly the same way as it works in BFA. We've got the Return of Wind Fury Totem, which casts a totem with 5 health at the feet of the caster for 2 whole minutes. Party members within 30 yards have a 10% chance when they auto-attack to swing an extra time. So you basically want to keep this out for pretty much every fight you can, because it is a huge buff. 10%, I believe. I heard somewhere that they're actually boosting it to 20%, but I'm not sure if that got cancelled or not. But it's a utility that actually enhances the group. It's nice to see Enhancement Shamans enhancing the group again, because they didn't really feel very enhancing when a lot of these abilities got removed in Legion and BFA. So I'm really glad that they're bringing back some key things that gets Enhancement Shamans invited to groups again. Hailstorm is still a talent, but very different. Flashing Flames, passive talent. Maelstrom Weapon, this is the passive I wanted to talk about. So notice the Maelstrom bar has been completely removed from the game. It's the same for Elemental. So when you deal damage with a melee weapon, you have a chance to gain Maelstrom Weapon, stacking up to 10 times. So if you remember the old school Maelstrom Weapon, it's pretty much the same thing, except you can get 10 stacks instead of just 5. Everything is instant cast at 5 stacks. So it works the same way as before, but you won't over cap all the time because you can go up to 10. So it's a bit cleaner than it was before, which is nice. So each stack of Maelstrom Weapons reduces the cast time of your next damage or healing spell by 20% and increases the damage or healing spell of your next spell, by 20%. And a maximum of 5 stacks of Maelstrom Weapon can be consumed at one time. So you can have up to 10 stacks, but it'll consume 5 maximum for the instant cast, obviously. And this works for pretty much every spell that's got cast time except for Hex. I don't know why it isn't, because Hex used to buff on it in the old days, I believe. So if they brought that back, that'd be good. Like, Hex has got a cooldown on it, really doesn't need to have a cast time. And we've got the Stormbringer passive. So your special attacks have a 6.4% chance to reset the remaining cooldown of Storm Strike and increase the damage of your next Storm Strike by 25%. So this is basically the thing that gives you the Storm Strike procs. We still have it in the game, but it's a lower chance of lower proc rate. And our Mastery, Enhanced Elements, so increases your chance to trigger Stormbringer and Wind Fury by 1.45% and increases all fire, frost, and nature damage you deal by 36.1%. So the more Mastery we have, the more procs and the more elemental damage we do, basically. Alright, with that said, I'm going to go over the talents and give you a demonstration on the training dummies of what these do. So the first row, we've got some interesting choices. We've got Lashing Flame. So Lash now increases the damage of Flame Shock on its target by 100% for 12 seconds. So if you wanted more of like a single target build, you basically Flame Shock and then Lava Lash. That's how you would open. And notice this will increase your damage by 100%. And as soon as you see that debuff wear off, make sure you can reapply it. And you've got talents like Hot Hand that reduce the cooldown of your Lava Lash. So you can keep this up 100% of the time on a single target. And if you hover over my damage meter, you can see Flame Shock is pretty hard hitting right now. However, I'm just auto attacking, not using any other spells. But Flame Shock becomes a powerful dot if you can keep it buffed up like that. It's very micromanagey, so I'd only recommend this talent on single target only. For all other scenarios, I think Forceful Winds actually does a better job. So Forceful Winds is a passive, so just like Lashing Flames. Wind Fury causes each successive Wind Fury attack within 15 seconds to increase the damage of Wind Fury by 50%, stacking up to 5 times. So basically, as you get Wind Fury procs, if you get a whole heap within 15 seconds, they'll do heaps and heaps and heaps of damage. However, as soon as that 15 seconds is worn off, the stacks reset. So each time you get a stack, it doesn't get renewed. Alright, now I've got Forceful Winds. So watch up here. I'll see if I can get it to proc for you. Fighting. So the problem with this talent is sometimes you can get really unlucky. Here we are, we've got 2 stacks of Forceful Winds, so that's a 100% increase. We've got 7 seconds left. And looks like 2 stacks is all we're going to get this time. And yeah, see, now we're back to 0. So even if I got a 3rd stack, it would have still counted off. It would have expired really quickly. So now we've got 1 stack. And yeah, it's going to wear. Oh, wait, 2 stacks, 3 stacks, and we're at 4 stacks. Wow, we got to 4 stacks and then it went out. So even if you did get to 4 or 5 stacks, it doesn't last long, but it still does a huge amount of damage. It's kind of like old school Wind Fury, where like that real short period of time, it just does a stupid amount of damage, but it doesn't last long. So yeah, it's very RNG talent, unfortunately, but if you want a talent that just gives you free damage without thinking about it, that's the choice of talent to go. And it's hard to tell if it's not really single target or AoE, it just enhances your weapon. So even if you change targets a lot, you'll still get that bonus damage with each Wind Fury proc. And we've got Elemental Blast. So Elemental Blast does work with Maelstrom Weapon, so even though it's got a cast time, if you use it with 5 stacks of Maelstrom, it'll be an instant cast. It hits pretty hard, and it'll give you a 3% stack increase of crit or haste, or a mastery increase by 6% for 10 seconds. So if you just prefer like a slightly harder hitting lightning bolt, that gives you a stat buff for 10 seconds, Elemental Blast is pretty cool. It's got a really nice visual effect. You will take up an extra key on your bar, so if you don't like having a lot of hotkeys, you probably won't like this talent too much. But I'm just gonna build up a few stacks of Maelstrom and see it highlights up once you got 5 stacks, and you can use it from 40 yards away, and it looks cool. So while this is on cooldown, you'll spend your Maelstrom on Lightning Bolt like that, and then by the time you got another stack of Maelstrom, you should be good to just use it off cooldown almost every time. But you might even want to just save your Maelstrom stacks just for Elemental Blast. It's a bit of a micromanaging talent though, so I'm not a huge fan. I am glad it's back in the game, but yeah, right now it doesn't quite hit hard enough that I'd like it to. I think the other talents are stronger against the Elemental Blast. Alrighty, let's look at the next tier of talent. So we've got some interesting choices here. So if you wanted something similar to the old school Enhance, well, when I say old school, I mean like BFA Enhance, Wind Fury Winds and Storm Fury would be one way of doing it. So Storm Fury, each time Wind Fury Weapon activates, the cooldown of Storm Strike is reduced by 1 second, right? So you can spam a lot more Storm Strikes using this build. Pretty straightforward, right? You don't have to think about it. It doesn't really change your rotation too much. Hot Hand does something really similar to Storm Fury, except to your Lava Lash. So melee auto attacks with Flame Tongue Weapon have a 5% chance to reduce the cooldown of Lava Lash by 75% and increase the damage of Lava Lash by 100% for 8 seconds. So Hot Hand's pretty cool. It's a lot better than the way it works in BFA. So it's not just a cooldown reset. Doesn't really reset your cooldown. It reduces it by a lot though. So you can use it quite often, and the buff will last 8 seconds. So you can use it again and again and again, have that short cooldown for 8 whole seconds. So you can get about 3 of them in that time at 100% increased damage, which is really nice to have. And then we've got Ice Strike, which is a new spell to the game that actually resets the cooldowns of your Flame and Frost Shock spells. So you could Flame Shock, Ice Strike, and then Frost Shock if you really wanted to use your shocks that quickly. Or if you wanted to multi-dot with Flame Shock, you could go Flame Shock, Ice Strike, and then Flame Shock your second target. You could do it that way as well. But it is another global, which is a bit annoying. But it does half decent frost damage, and it is another slow. So if you need to slow something and Frost Shock's on cooldown and your slow totem's not available, you can just use Ice Strike. So it's got a little bit of utility. However, I think Hot Hand is the winner here. Hot Hand has really good synergy with Lashing Flames on single target. For multi-target, Forceful Winds also goes really well with it as well. Okay, so the next talent, we haven't got too much change here. So Spirit Wolf is probably the one that you'd go to most of the time just for the extra movement speed and the damage reduction, which is great whenever you have to move and dodge mechanics and you can't hit anything in raids. It's also great for just general travel and questing in general. You've got Static Charge over here, so this is probably the go-to talent for Mythic Plus. That way you can stun a lot more frequently. And you still got Earth Shield. Remember, you can't have Earth Shield and Lightning Shield on at the same time, so if you choose Earth Shield, you'll have to lose your Lightning Shield, which is a damage loss. However, you can cast Earth Shield on other people in your party, so you can choose this talent, still have Earth Shield, still have Lightning Shield on yourself, and you can keep Earth Shield up on the tank. If the tank's a little squishy, you can help them out there. So if you like that hybrid play as a shaman, you can definitely do that with the Earth Shield. The next row is probably one of my favorite rows in the game at the moment, because this is all about, this is really upping your playstyle difference. Each one has a completely different rotation to how you play. So Elemental Assault. Storm Strike damage is increased by 15%, and Storm Strike now generates 1 stack of Maelstrom Weapon. So if you want tons of Maelstrom and you want Storm Strike to hit really hard and you want to go, Forceful Wind, Storm Fury, Elemental Assault, that's pretty much the closest build you're going to get to the Legion BFA build where you just spam Storm Strike all the time. Still very fun. I don't blame you if you like that playstyle. I also enjoy it. Hailstorm is probably my favorite talent in the game right now. So whenever you consume a stack of Maelstrom Weapon, so normally we'll consume 5 stacks at once, your Frost Shock will be increased by 35%. the damage will be increased by 35% per stack consumed, up to a maximum of 5 stacks, right? Not only that, it'll cause your next frost shock to hit 1 additional target per Maelstrom stack consumed. So, if we consume 5, then our damage is 35% times 5, plus that's hitting 5 targets, if there's 5 targets together. So this becomes an AoE basically. It turns your frost shock into an AoE as long as you're consuming 5 Maelstrom Weapon stacks before using your frost shot. It's probably one of the hardest hitting abilities for Enhancement Shaman if you do this talent correctly, do the rotation correctly, and it's very, very fun because remember, it's also a slow and a very hard hitting weapon. So as I said before, think of it like an AoE earth shock that always slows. It sounds pretty cool, right? So you'll have a lot of fun with this. I'm just going to show you on these training dummies here to give you an idea of what your AoE rotation will be like. See, we've got full stacks, right? 5 stacks of Maelstrom Weapon. That's what this symbol here means. So we're going to use that on Chain Lightning because we're AoEing, right? And now, see this buff here? That's Hailstorm. See, we've got 5 stacks. So Frost Shock will do 175% additional damage and hit 5 additional targets. So when I hit it, boom, it hits all 4 of these training dummies at once. So then I can Chain Lightning, Frost Shock, Chain Lightning, Crash Lightning, Frost Shock, and then Storm Strike, Lava Lash. Oh, look at that. Chain Lightning, Frost Shock, Crash Lightning, Sundering, Chain Lightning, Frost Shock. Like, it's just so much fun to AoE as Shaman. There's a lot more buttons to press, a lot more things to watch, so it's not as simple as just spam Crash Lightning and spam Storm Strike like in BFA. It's a much more complicated rotation, but it's way more enjoyable and way more rewarding. Like, you actually do way more damage than what you did before, plus you get the AoE slow, so there's a bit of utility involved with it, and really skilled Shaman will be able to do a huge amount of AoE damage. So I reckon this is probably my favorite talent for enhancement right now. I really hope that they don't change it. I think damage it does is good. It's not too strong. The AoE effect is just really satisfying. It's a really fun spell. Fire Nova. Now, Fire Nova is also a very fun spell. It's reduced by haste, so the more haste you have, the shorter the cooldown. Basically, it works similar to Epidemic for Unholy DK. So you spread your flame shocks. Let me just put this on my action bar. So basically, if I put 1 flame shock up and Fire Nova, right, it's going to do a bit of damage. But if I can get several flame shocks up, let's see if we can get 4 up here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And look at that. It does way more damage, right? However, as you can see, I have to use 4 globals and keep them up just to keep that damage rolling, right? So the Hailstorm talent is definitely the winner here, simply because it doesn't affect your rotation too much. It's a smooth rotation. Fire Nova has a very clunky rotation, so I'm hoping this spell gets reworked a little bit. I'm hoping they bring back where Lava Lash will actually spread your flame shocks, because Lava Lash used to spread flame shocks in before Legion. I think every expansion before Legion it did that when Lava Lash came into the game. However, yeah, if you've got to manually cast Flame Shock on everything to make Fire Nova worth it, then it's not worth it, because unless they bring in a way that allows us to do like 2 Flame Shocks at a time, or make it spread with Lava Lash, I just don't see Fire Nova being useful. It's nice to see it back, don't get me wrong. It's a really fun talent. It was one of my favorite spells back in Warlords of Draenor and Cataclysm and Mr. Pandaria. However, that was also back when you could spread your Flame Shock with Lava Lash, so it just flowed so much better. So I'm hoping they'll change it up a bit to make it easier to spread Flame Shock. Otherwise, it's just going to be a dead talent. Everyone's just going to choose this talent or this talent. So Blizzard are seeing this, please just add Lava Lash spreads your Flame Shock to 2 additional targets or something. That would be enough. That's all you need to do to make this viable. Alright, 40 tier, we've got Nature's Guardian. So when your health is brought to 35%, you instantly heal for 20% of your maximum health. Can occur for more than once every 45 seconds, so it's almost like a secondary defensive like a healing defensive every 45 seconds. So it's actually pretty good. It's passive, you don't really need to think about it. And it can save you a few times if the heal is, you know, just a little bit late on the heals. Feral Lunge, if your healer is good enough, you don't need to take this. You can just choose Feral Lunge. That will make you a bit more mobile and closing on enemies a bit better. It's a 30-second cooldown, which can be kind of long, and it's only 25-yard range, which isn't huge, but I've still found it handy in some situations. And Windrush Totem, it's basically just a movement speed boost for 5 seconds. Not really that useful. It used to dispel movement and pairing effects. I'm not sure if it still does. It doesn't say, and I haven't tested it. If it does, then yes, it's useful. If it doesn't, not really useful at all. It's a big cooldown for something that's very niche. So yeah, I can see these two being good choices. This, yeah, needs some more work. Crash Lightning leaves electrifying field on the ground. Enemies that stand in it will take 186 nature damage over 6 seconds. So you got 186 damage over 6 seconds, or you've got 1,380 damage every 40 seconds, right? So obviously this is a clear winner as far as damage goes. However, you can keep this up pretty much off cooldown the entire time. So it's up to you. This is another cooldown, another button you're going to worry about. This is more passive, so if you prefer the passive play, you might prefer this talent. However, Sundering is just the clear winner here, just for the CC and the damage. It's kind of like a free interrupt as well, so Sundering still wins. Stormkeeper is new, so Stormkeeper is an elemental artifact ability from Legion. Empowers your next 2 lightning bolts or chain lightnings to do 150% more damage and be instant cast. So you could have some interesting play here. However, because you got Maelstrom Weapon and it's another you have to cast, I'm not sure if you've got to cast it with Maelstrom. I'm sure you would. Yeah, I think you can. I can actually test that here. Let's just put this on our talent bar. And let's just generate some Maelstrom. And we'll use this spell at 5 stacks. Here we go. Okay. Oh yeah, look, it's highlighted. Ready? 1, and then we just hit Chain Lightning, Chain Lightning. Okay, so the third time, yeah, so it's just 2 charges. I think it will still consume Maelstrom stacks, which is weird. So yeah, the talent may need some more work on Blizzard's side. However, like it's definitely fun that I can see it being used in PvP, and it does work with Maelstrom Weapon, so it is an instant cast. You can pop that and do 2 big lightning bolts or 2 big chain lightnings. So Elemental Spirits reduces your cooldown for Feral Spirit by 30 seconds and causes your Feral Spirits to be imbued with Fire, Frost, or Lightning, enhancing your ability. So if you wanted more of an AoE build, this would be the best talent to pick for AoE, as your Crash Lightning actually buffs your Elemental Spirits, your Spirit Wolves. Makes them AoE, and if they're AoE with elemental abilities, they're going to do even more damage. You still got Earthen Splack, which is that annoying 20-second cooldown you got to keep up on the target. It's very single target orientated, but it will buff up your physical and nature damage, which is pretty much what Storm Strike is. And your Lightning Bolt, so we'll buff that every 10 seconds. So 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off if you use it off cooldown, basically. And then you've got Ascendance, which is your big 3-minute cooldown. This is probably the spell I'd use most of the time for single target and PvP, as it just does a huge amount of damage and it makes your auto attacks ranged, as well as your Wind Strike, which is what Storm Strike turns into, and you can hit people from a ranged distance. So that's basically all the talents. You've got some familiar ones in there, and you've got some brand new ones. It's nice to see a lot of new ones in there. And you've got some ones that are returning to the game that used to be into the game. I still think there's a little bit more work that needs to be done, especially on Fight Nova. But overall, Enchantment is looking really solid, and I think it's going to be one of the most fun rework specs in Shadowlands, and that's what I've decided to main for the expansion for those who are curious. So I'll be making a lot of enhancement content if you guys want to sub to the channel if you're interested in that. I'll be going over covenants and everything if I get beta access. Unfortunately, I don't have beta access. This is all done on the PTR. That's why I'm just talking about the pre-patch. Tiqqle, he's a great YouTuber to check out for enhancement videos. He's covered a lot of stuff on the beta. So definitely check him out and throw him a sub if you haven't already. And thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.